Welcome to the Essential Self-Care Podcast, a show for those of us who are, let's face it, too busy for self-care. I'm your host, Dr. Sheetal Ajmani, a physician turned speaker, coach, and consultant. As the founder of Radiant Living Institute, I help women, leaders, and executives navigate personal and professional challenges with clarity, confidence, and self-compassion. I also work with leadership teams and organizations to optimize their performance and impact. In this show, you will hear real world experiences and expert insights to help you cultivate a kinder, more compassionate relationship with yourself so that you can show up as your best self, whether in your career, community, or personal relationships. Please note that this show is for educational purposes only and is not medical advice. Always consult your own healthcare provider about your specific situation. Now, let's get started. Hello, and welcome back to another episode of the Essential Self-Care Podcast. I am so excited about today's guest. I have the pleasure of welcoming Rebecca Kleinhample to the show. Rebecca serves as Executive Director of the Virginia Living Museum, where she oversees a staff of close to 100, over 800 volunteers, and thousands of visitors per year. The Virginia Living Museum is located in Newport News, Virginia, and is home to over 1,100 native species that represent every region of Virginia. It's a blend of zoo, aquarium, science center, and planetarium focused on conservation, education, and discovery. I have had the pleasure of visiting multiple times, and it truly is a gem in the area. So today, Rebecca is going to share a bit of her self-care journey that actually led her to the museum in the first place and what self-care looks like now, juggling all of the different responsibilities and roles that you play in your current position. I'm so excited to dive into this conversation with you today, Rebecca. Thank you for being here.
Hi, Sheetal. Thank you so much for the great introduction. Number one, you did absolutely wonderful with my name. Kleinhample is not the easiest, but thank you so much. I am so pleased to be here and talk with you.
Absolutely. I'm so excited. So for our listeners, Rebecca and I had the chance to meet up for coffee not too long ago, and we were just learning more about each other, and it was just such a wonderful conversation. And so when I was relaunching the podcast, because we took a brief hiatus while I was working on my book. And so as I was getting ready to, as I was brainstorming who I want to invite on the show, Rebecca, you were one of the first people I thought of. And during our coffee conversation that lovely morning, not too long ago, you shared a bit about your personal self-care journey that actually led you to the museum and joining the museum. The museum was a pivotal part of that journey for you over 20 years ago. Would you be able to tell us about that time in your life and how that led you to the Virginia Living Museum?
Oh, absolutely. So starting with the base of being a military spouse. So lots of travel, lots of changes in location, and lots of job and career changes along the way. I came to the Virginia Peninsula. My two girls were young and just starting into the schools, and I wanted something part-time that I could still focus on them. Family is first. Family will always be first. So self-care journey for me has been strong family and the blessing of that, and making and ensuring that's the primary focus of my life. But I was fortunate enough to come to the museum as a visitor, as a guest, and became a member, and then saw, you mentioned 20 years ago, there were still newspaper ads for jobs. And so I saw one of those for the Virginia Living Museum for a part-time membership manager. I thought, oh my gosh, I could actually potentially have found something that speaks to me, to my background and how I was raised. I was an outside kid, Sheetal. I was digging the creeks with my brother. I was fishing the Susquehanna River in the summers. I was gardening with my dad, and there was no social media and there was no cell phone. And I was literally an outside kid. I'm a doer. And so when I came and found that position, I thought, oh, could it be? I was a science major also and a business minor. And so I thought, I don't want to put too much into this right away, but I jumped into the part-time job. and thought, oh, this is a beautiful place. And I think I may have found meaning now in a career after so many years of transitions. And I think that's probably sums up who I am after the seasons we go through in our life is find meaning. And it's got to be something that truly speaks to you for you to have, everyone talking about work life balance. I think it's just more of the integration of your career with your life, and hopefully that can move through your life and all the life changes with you. And as women, as we perhaps try to do it all, but it never happens all at the same time. It's through different seasons of our lives.
Yeah. Absolutely. You brought up so many wonderful points in just sharing a bit of your own journey there. And I know that's just a fraction of the whole journey, but
Right.
there's so many key points that from what you shared that I want to just draw out for our listeners. First of all, I have people tune into this show from all over the world. We're based in Hampton Roads, Virginia, which is a hub of the Navy. And so a lot of my local listeners can really relate to being a military spouse, to
Mm-hmm.
having young kids, to moving quite a lot, to all of those transitions that you spoke of, where that landed you here in the region, that landed you to first visiting the museum with your young kids, and you at that time. And you mentioned right off the bat also a big part of your self care. I'll say blueprint. When I'm working with my clients, I often work with them and talk about it as creating our own sort of blueprint for what self care looks like for us, because it is so individualized. And also, as you mentioned, it can vary during different seasons of our life. And so, that prioritizing family has been a big part of your blueprint, it sounds like, as well as spending time outdoors. You said you grew up outdoors. And one thing in the work that I do with my clients often, what I find with them as well as with myself, is that often these things that we naturally turn to when we were children, because that's also different for all of us,
Yeah.
those are part of our blueprint. And so for you, that was the outdoors. When I think of, I was recently a guest on a podcast where I was talking about the work that I'm doing now with speaking and writing and coaching and consulting. And I talked about how I can trace back to early childhood where I was writing, where I was giving speeches, even as like an elementary school child. And so kind of tracing back to when we were younger, I think that all, someone else may be have always been into art or drawing or
Right.
painting. And I just think when we look back to childhood, it's like those are some of the things that we were just innate to us, that we were born with, that carry through. And so
Oh,
reconnecting
absolutely.
with that, or finding ways to reconnect with that, can be such an
Yeah.
important
Yeah.
part of the journey. I also really enjoyed how you shared that in that moment when you decided to move forward with that part-time position
Mm-hmm.
about 20 years ago, it's this sense of meaning that created for you. And I can hear it in your voice, and I can see it, that even now, 20 years later, even now having started as part-time membership, now serving as the executive director, that is such a
Right.
big part of it. And I think it's really interesting also what you described of like that work-life integration. And what came to me was when you're able to find that work that has that meaning for you, it's almost like it's just folded into your life as a whole. At least that's how I feel now with the work that I'm
Right.
doing as well. And not that that has to be that for everyone or during all seasons of one's life,
Sure.
but it can be. And that can be a way of creating some of that work life integration and having it
Right.
just being folded into your life.
Right.
So I'm curious, how did that experience being new to town, after having moved a lot,
Mm-hmm.
lots of different career transitions through that,
Mm-hmm.
having a young family, visiting the museum, finding something there just really resonated with you. taking that part-time position, starting to fold in that sense of meaning and purpose in this aspect of your life as well. How has that sort of shaped who and where you are today?
Joy in what I see here every day. The joy for myself professionally in not knowing truly what I wanted to be. I got a degree in science because I was interested in how things worked and in nature. And I loved the classes about geology, and I loved finding rocks and determining what they were. And I got a rock tumbler, by the way, when I was mature, because I didn't get one at Christmas when I was younger. Um, but just those things about, like you mentioned, the early experiences that form us. I think so much of that too is that we have no responsibility. And so childhood is joyful, hopefully, and your experiences are unencumbered. And that speaks to me every day. And when I see families here um, enjoying each other and enjoying learning, even though they may not come here to learn, we're an education institution, but they come here because there's beautiful trails and because there are beautiful live animals looking back at you and doing interesting things, and you get to talk about that together. It's definitely those experiences that speak to me now, and the whole compilation of what I did in the for-profit world as a military spouse, as we moved and moved and moved, came together here at this museum with my science degree, with a for-profit background, working in a nonprofit environment where we have both business models, right? We're looking for philanthropic gifts as a nonprofit, and we're also running business model of retail. There's a store here of admissions and membership and the conversions. And the ancillary sales. So all of that, strangely, wrapped together for me. Did I plan that? No. I knew I got a degree in what I liked and what I loved. As it turns out, I wasn't adept at science, but business was a little more my lane. I'm a logical person. I love spreadsheets. I love puzzles. So if you want, to put those together, a nonprofit is a really great place to do that.
Yeah. I love how you shared, you got to, like, this isn't something that you had planned out step by step per
Right.
se. You got
Right.
degrees in what you liked and what you loved.
Yep.
And I love seeing when, I mean, this is just the part of the magic of life itself. And when we just sort of open up to what it has to
Right.
offer us and we kind of follow those seeds of joy, those seeds of what energizes us, those seeds of what light us up, is that life kind of finds this way to bring it all together. And in this role, you're bringing together, and I know I loved hearing this when we chatted over coffee as well, of just seeing how the science from undergrad, the business from undergrad, and then all the work you did in the for-profit world, and it all just tied together. Your love of nature, your strong prioritization of family life for yourself personally, and what you just mentioned about what contributes to the joy that you experience on a regular basis now also
Right.
is
Right.
seeing those families visiting the museum, seeing
Yep.
them engaging with each other. And so that's just been this just core thread, both for yourself personally, as well as what you're seeing in the museum and the work that you're doing and the joy that that is giving you
Right.
there as well.
Sheetal, I'm also, tell a little bit on myself. I'm a bit of a workaholic. I, I like to work. I
Yeah.
just do. And so in the conversation of self-care, you got to be careful and you got to tell yourself, stop, go home. And now talking about the seasons of life, my children are grown and I can put myself fully into this portion of my career. I couldn't have done this when I was raising children. It's very demanding. As you mentioned, there's a lot of stakeholders with a nonprofit, and there's always something to do and someone to talk to and someone to get excited with about what we're doing here. And all of that is very joyful and really time consuming. And I'm loving every minute of it, but I also have to be very careful not to forget about taking time off. And my family is really good helping me with that because they call me right back with they're in their late 20s now and not local here. So we travel. That's a norm for me as a military. We travel and see our children and our family, and we make that a priority to be sure that, at least on a quarterly basis, you got to have some kind of schedule, at least on a quarterly basis, we're spending time together. And we plan vacations together. And there was a time when I fell off that wagon and I didn't do that so well. And it just doesn't bode well for you personally, nor for the team that you're leading. If I'm not relaxed and if I'm not in balance, then that hurts everybody. That can be pervasive. And so I've learned some lessons there and really work to help my leaders here at the museum know that your time off is your time off. And I may be working in my brain and I may send you an email off hours, but please know you're not expected to answer. That's me getting something out and done. And I found ways to handle that too. We use a one-on-one sheet where I can put my thoughts and not have it be something that my colleagues feel like, oh gosh, I've got to respond. It's not a great way to have a balance. So I've worked through a lot of trial and tribulation and figuring out that self-care for me leads to self-care for my team as well. And hoping they hear me clearly when I say, yes, I have your cell phone number. I will never use it unless it's an emergency. That's what a cell phone is for in my mind. This is a 361 day a year operation, 7 days a week. So there's very little downtime for an institution like this. Mm-hmm. And so I am very cognizant of we all spend a lot of time here and sometimes very different hours. And so your time off is your time off.
Yeah. You brought up so many wonderful points. Thank you for sharing that and diving into a little bit of that. This idea that you shared of, and we talked about how being at the museum, it contributes to the joy that you experience. You talked about how it contributes to a sense of meaning. You talked about how you also just love to do the work. You love to do the work. And that can be an interesting balance. It's such a gift when we are able to find something like that lights us up in all of those ways.
Right.
And at the same time, as you mentioned, it can be easy then to not only want to, but also that the need is there. It can be easy to sort of work at all hours. And you came to realize that in doing that, you had to also, again, through some of those trials and tribulations, that it was important to set sort of these boundaries and reminders around that for yourself.
Right.
And in doing so, you're not only, and this is why I'm so passionate about us as leaders of teams, leaders of in our families, leaders in our community, our own journeys through this. As you mentioned, you said it so beautifully, that self-care for yourself also leads to self-care for your team, because it really does ripple down. And our team, whether that is a team of employees, direct reports, whether that is in your volunteer activities in your community, whether that is your family, your children, they will feel safe and they will trust you when you say, yes, take this time for yourself, if they see you doing it also. So that was, you summed it up in such a beautiful statement there. So I'm just going to repeat that again. Self-care for me also leads to self-care for my team.
And the T word is huge. When you fully trust each other, because you have very authentic, real conversations. If I've got team members who have young children, I'm sure to have conversations that they know. I've done that. And, you know, the funny part is there's so many more or better tools now. There's so much knowledge now that is shared for helping particularly working parents be able to manage and techniques. And I tell them, I'm so jealous. If I had that when I was, you know, even in my 30s, it would have helped a lot because some of those are personal struggles that now I look at and I'm thinking, gosh, everybody knows everything. And this is such a fabulous opportunity for women, particularly because there's so much available now that just simply was not, and career options. And I think the one big lesson also, because I'm thinking of self care, is how do you get to a point of, like me particularly, having this varied numbers of experiences as we moved. I at points started to think, what am I? What am I doing? And I went to a session where the coach lead had all of us stand up and imagine a bubble around ourselves and think about where you, as a unique person that you are in the experience that you have, whether that's being a mother, whether that's currently working, where is your power place and how can you see yourself? You're in this bubble now, and how can you see yourself in a point of power? And you know, I'm not describing it as good as she did, but it was so powerful for me because I realized I was so confident in being a mother, in knowing how I wanted to raise my children. That doesn't mean I knew every step I was going to take. It just meant that I felt very comfortable in guiding them, and that was my purpose. And I thought, oh my gosh, how can I think about feeling that way in my work? Because I think confidence, particularly for leadership, is huge. And you need to find where that confidence point is for you, yourself, not how someone else does it or how that looks. And I thought, I just, you know, reach out all the time and just learn, because that was so powerful for me. If I feel confident in helping to guide my two girls, and right or wrong, I compare a lot of things in our work world with choices you make as a parent or the challenges you have as a parent, because it's all about collaboration and working together, and how are we thinking about, say, our community and how we're building our community together, and how we as individuals do that. Don't wait for someone else to do that, right? Find that point for yourself where you can be engaged and feel that you can give because you're confident in your purpose or your power place. Power is a really good word, as a really guiding or foundational element to get you through all the challenges of leading and such a variety of people on a staff team and 800 volunteers, all with different, perhaps, expectations. But then when you realize you're working for a mission like the Virginia Living Museum, or name any mission of something that gives you a collective purpose, and then you draw on that. And so that's been many years in the making. My wish for people is that you do that faster and don't waste any time, and look for that power for yourself and do the hard things. Just do the hard things. I hated public speaking, Sheetal. I'm fair and blue-eyed, and I just turned bright red every time I was in front of an audience. I like interpersonal, individual interaction. And so I thought, oh gosh, if I have a hard time speaking in front of people, that's really career limiting. And so I got to a point in my career where I thought, if I can't do that, I'm limiting myself. And how do I feel about that? What do I want? So I joined a group that every week we met in the morning, and you had to stand up and speak and tell something about yourself. You didn't have to give a presentation. You just had to tell something about yourself. So the first 3 months I did that, red-faced and sweating. And then finally I wasn't. And then someone on my staff team, not long after that, had the same challenge. And I thought, I'm going to help her with that. I'm going to let her know that it doesn't matter if you're red faced and you're sweating. Who cares?
Yeah.
Be confident in what you're saying. Our physiological expression and things we don't necessarily control don't matter. That power place gives you credibility in the content that you're delivering. The meaning gives you credibility in the content that you're delivering. And so it's been fun now. And
Yeah.
so I just wish that I could have learned those lessons earlier because life is short.
Yeah, yeah, it really is. It really is. Thank you so much for sharing that experience.
Yeah,
There's so much in what
yeah,
you just shared that I found valuable, and I'm sure our listeners did too. Thank you for sharing. As we're starting to wrap up, I'm just going to kind of sum up some of those reflections from what you just shared. Thank you for sharing that visualization of the
yeah,
bubble and really kind of thinking about where that
yeah,
power rests. And I
yeah.
think, especially as women, that can be something that we maybe aren't asked often or aren't asked to reflect on or to think about kind of
Right.
where does our power sit, and just looking historically, socioculturally, that isn't something as women that we were necessarily taught to or encouraged to explore for ourselves. And I know many people, men, women alike, go through phases where they are, as you described, of feeling like, who am I? What matters to me right now? Asking themselves these questions. And you spoke a lot about confidence and what can give rise to that confidence. One, you said, is connecting to that power place within yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Another tool, and I'll call it a tool that I also use in my work with clients as well, is thinking about other aspects of your life where you feel that way, and then bringing that, carrying that over, thinking about how you can apply that to other aspects of your life. Like you said,
Right.
you felt confident as a mother. And again, confidence doesn't mean, you said specifically, that didn't mean that you knew every step that you were going to take. And that's not what confidence means. But you felt confident that you would be able to guide them,
Right.
not necessarily knowing what step, every single step of the way. And then you were able to then translate that into your career and this mission that you are serving. And then you also shared how, and this is part of the definition of confidence, is it's built through repeated action. So the example that you shared with public speaking, of just putting yourself in that place, of continuing to work on that. And then I love how you wrapped that up with then sharing that lesson with others. So I think of that sort of, climbing the steps and reaching your hand back to help others come up along with you. And that's exactly what you were doing. And that's so important for all of us as women, as communities, as families, personally, and in the professional workplaces. So I want to thank you so much for being here today. I feel like there's so much more we could dive into, and I'm just so grateful for you for spending this time with us and sharing a bit of your journey and the challenges and the lessons learned along the way. For our listeners, where can they learn more about you, the Virginia Living Museum?
Oh gosh, there's not much out there about me. I've never done that real well, but the VLM.org. So THEVLM.org. We're in Newport News, Virginia. It's a beautiful 23, 24 acre campus of nature, and nature is science. And so all of that is fun here. And the beauty of it being fun is that you could consider maybe a career someday, that you could do this too, that you could be involved in some kind of joyful pursuit as a career. And so the museum, as you aptly described, is a lot of things, and it's really all about Virginia and what you find here in Virginia. So your studies, your SOL studies, just come to life on our campus, and you find joy in each other on our campus, and that's probably the best thing.
Yeah, absolutely. It really is a gem in the area. I actually first moved to Hampton Roads close to 25 years ago, but I
Good.
I just discovered the Virginia Living Museum a few years ago, and it's such a gem. So like you shared a little bit earlier too, like, don't wait. I know we were talking about other things there, but I would also say here, as we're wrapping up, don't wait to visit the Virginia Living Museum. It really is a
Okay.
gem in the community. I didn't learn about it until sort of much later after already being in the community for a while. And it really is a gem. And for anyone who isn't local, but you happen to be visiting the area, definitely stop by. Thank you again for being here today, Rebecca.
Thank you so much, Sheetal. Such a joy to talk with you, and I'm now a super fan.
That's a wrap. If you enjoyed the show, please subscribe, rate, and write a quick positive review wherever you're tuning in, on Apple, Spotify, or YouTube. Your reviews really do help the show reach more people who need it. And as a free gift, don't forget to download your Radiant Living Starter Guide at radiantlivinginstitute.com.